Awaken your spirit, chosen one. You were never just a chapter in their story. You were the turning point, the divine interruption. They thought you were ordinary, just another name they could forget. But what they failed to see is that you were the blessing that kept their world from crumbling. You were the anchor in their storm, the calm in their chaos, the light in their darkest season. And when they mishandled you, they didn't just lose a person. They lost favor, they lost peace, they lost protection. You've heard it said before, people don't know what they have until it's gone. But here's the twist. When someone touches a chosen one with unclean hands, it's not just loss they face. It's exposure. Suddenly everything they tried to hide starts surfacing. The masks slip, the charm fades, and the truth begins to echo louder than their lies ever could. Now no one respects them, not because you said anything, not because you fought back, but because God removed the covering that once shielded them when you were in their life. The same people they tried to impress now see them for who they really are. The applause has stopped, the admiration has turned into whispers, and the ones who once stood with them are now walking away, because when you left, the light left with you. See, what they didn't understand is this. You weren't just a lover, a friend, or a partner. You were divine strategy, a spiritual elevation sent into human form. You were their moment of grace, and they failed the test. They chose ego over empathy, games over growth, and now they're reaping the silence that they sowed. They didn't just lose you, they lost their connection to favor. When you walked away, heaven closed the doors they used to walk through so easily. The peace they took for granted, gone. The energy they drained from you, cut off. The glow they borrowed from your presence, dimmed. You weren't just someone. You were the mirror God used to show them who they could have become and who they truly were. Now they walk with a weight they can't name. They smile, but it doesn't shine. They move, but it's not magnetic. Because respect isn't something you demand. It's something you carry. And without your presence, they are exposed for who they really are. People no longer feel drawn to them. They feel repelled. Because when the spirit of a chosen one departs, the fragrance of favor departs too. But don't misunderstand, this isn't about revenge. This is about revelation. God is showing you who you are by showing you what happens when you're no longer in the room. You thought you were just healing, just moving on. But what you didn't know is that your absence is now preaching louder than your presence ever did. Your silence is now a sermon. Your growth is now the punishment they never expected. Chosen one, your value was never in how much they needed you. It was in how much God trusted you. And the reason they couldn't handle you is because they were never meant to carry the weight of your worth. You were oil in a jar they had no discipline to protect. You were sacred in the hands of someone casual. And now, what they lost has become a lesson they can't escape. And you're rising, quietly, boldly, authentically. You don't need to prove a thing. Just keep walking in truth. Because the people who once overlooked you are about to witness what happens when divine favor returns to its rightful owner. The crown never stopped being yours. You just had to remember you were wearing it the whole time. If this spoke to your spirit, like this video, subscribe and comment, "I am the blessing," to join this journey. Let the world watch how a chosen one rises, without revenge, without noise, just power. You were never just someone in their life. You were the divine shift they didn't see coming. You weren't a chapter, they were a footnote. And while they treated you like an option, you were the answer to prayers they weren't even brave enough to speak aloud. Chosen one, awaken your spirit, because this isn't about heartbreak. This is about awakening. You didn't just walk away, you were removed. Not by accident, not by weakness, but by divine order. God separated you so he could elevate you. They thought they had time. They thought you'd always be there, waiting, forgiving, shrinking yourself, so they could feel big. But the moment God revealed who you truly were, the game changed. Heaven doesn't let diamonds sit in the dirt for long. You were the light they mishandled, the peace they drained, the blessing they confused with convenience. And now the very presence that gave them favor is gone, and everything is falling apart. It wasn't just your love that kept them afloat. It was your anointing, the unseen force, the divine covering, the grace that made their life look stable while they played games with your heart. But that grace wasn't theirs. It was borrowed. It followed you, and the moment you stopped fighting for them, it went back to its rightful owner. That's why the respect is gone. That's why they're spiraling. Because without you, they're exposed, empty, seen for who they really are. Without the glow you brought into the room, you were the light in their darkness, the calm in their storm, the voice of reason when their world was loud with confusion. They didn't fall in love with your looks. They fell for the safety your presence brought. They fell for the energy of someone who prays, someone who heals, someone who listens with the soul. But when pride speaks louder than purpose, people confuse the sacred for the ordinary. They called you too much. But really, you were more than they were prepared to receive. You gave truth, you gave wisdom, you gave the kind of love that restores. And still they chose dysfunction. Still they chose ego. Still they chose people who clapped for their destruction while you were quietly trying to rebuild them behind the scenes. They weren't ready. And now they're reaping the silence of your departure. But don't let the pain trick you into bitterness. You didn't lose anything. You were spared. You were removed before your destiny got delayed. Because had you stayed, their dysfunction would have become your prison. Their confusion would have become your ceiling. And God loves you too much to let you rot in a place your anointing has outgrown. Your exit wasn't a failure. It was a graduation. The ones who rejected you didn't understand they were rejecting the very thing that held their life together. And now they're watching as everything they tried to replace you with collapses, because you were never meant to be replaced. What's divine can't be duplicated. When you carry favor, you don't just light up a room, you shift the atmosphere. You make broken people believe again. You make bitter people soften. You make distracted people refocus. But not everyone is ready for the weight of your presence. Some people don't want to grow. They want to remain the same while draining. What's great in others? That's why they couldn't love you properly. They saw your light and thought it would stay forever, even if they dimmed it. But your light isn't available to just anyone. It's a gift, not a guarantee. Now they're starting to realize something. The peace they felt with you, it wasn't chemistry, it was covering. The glow they saw in your eyes, it wasn't attraction, it was anointing. The confidence they gained when you were around, it wasn't magic, it was favor. And without you, they're learning the hard way that peace doesn't come from chaos, that love doesn't live in games. That respect can't be forced, it must be earned. Their fall from grace didn't happen because you walked away. It happened because they rejected what God sent to save them. You weren't just a lesson, you were mercy. You were restoration. In human form, you were the embodiment of a second chance, and they treated you like an afterthought. Now heaven has closed the door they took for granted, and here's the part they never saw coming. Your absence would speak louder than your presence ever did. You haven't said a word, and yet your silence is echoing through their soul. Because silence is loud when you're used to being held by someone who had divine hands, when you're used to being seen by someone who could see beyond your wounds, when you're used to being forgiven more times than you deserved. Your presence brought them honor, but now no one respects them because the foundation they were standing on was you. And without you, they're standing on pride, on ego, on false narratives, and that always crumbles. People may not know the full story, but they feel the shift. They can sense the energy is different, the charisma is gone, the charm is empty, the influence dry. Because when God's hand lifts, it's impossible to pretend like it's still there. But don't focus on them now. This is your season, your healing, your breakthrough. The tables have turned for a reason. You've cried. Enough. You've questioned your worth enough. You've tried to fix what was never yours to fix. Now it's time to rise quietly, powerfully, authentically. You don't need closure. Your healing is the closure. You don't need revenge. Your growth is the revenge. You don't need to prove your worth. Your peace proves it every day. You were the test, and they failed. They prayed for real, but when real showed up in your skin, they mistook it for too much. They weren't ready, and that's not your fault. Some people are only meant to prepare you for what's next. Their betrayal was the prophecy. Their disrespect was the redirection. Their absence is the blessing you didn't know you needed. And now, everything they tried to build without you is crumbling, because they tried to steal the fruit without honoring the root. But you are the root. You are the soil. You are the water that helps people grow. You were never just part of their life. You were the favor that kept it together. Chosen one, you are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not a mistake. You are heaven's best strategy in disguise. And the moment you fully understand who you are, the world won't just change around you. It will shift because of you. You are the blessing. You are the miracle. You are the shift. Keep walking. Keep rising. Keep glowing. Because the best part of your story, they thought they could tarnish your name in private and still shine in public. They thought their games would never catch up with them. But what they failed to realize is that what's done in darkness is always answered in light. The disrespect they showed behind closed doors is now turning into the silence they face in the open. What once looked like admiration has turned into avoidance. Where they once stood proud, now they shrink in rooms that used to celebrate them. Chosen. When there's a reason no one respects them anymore. It's not bitterness, it's not karma, it's spiritual law. When you dishonor what's divine, the universe doesn't applaud you, it corrects you, and the correction has begun. Not because you wished for their downfall, but because you were never meant to be treated like an afterthought while carrying the presence of divine royalty. You see, public shame is the fruit of private dishonor. And that's exactly what they sowed. While you were giving, they were taking. While you were covering, they were exposing. While you were praying, they were playing. They thought no one would ever see. But heaven has a way of shining light where truth needs to be revealed. And now their harvest is growing, and it's not admiration, it's isolation. You never needed revenge. The truth was always going to speak, and now it's screaming louder than any excuse they could come up with. They built their reputation on illusion, on charm, on borrowed energy. But when your energy left, the illusion cracked. The charm faded. The applause stopped. Because favor doesn't rest on lies, it doesn't linger in manipulation. Favor follows the faithful, and they were never faithful to what God placed in their hands. You weren't just love, you were a test, a moment of truth dressed in flesh. You were the divine chance to break cycles. But some people love their patterns more than their purpose. They weren't ready for what you carried. They didn't have the spiritual maturity to handle someone real, so they fumbled. And now, the very people they tried to impress don't even look their way. Because respect can't be demanded. It flows naturally from alignment. And once they broke alignment with you, they broke alignment with their own elevation. Now they're looking for what they had. Searching in eyes that don't hold the same light. Reaching for hands that don't heal, only hold. But they can't recreate what was God ordained. They tried to fill the void with substitutes, but nothing sticks because your presence wasn't just emotional. It was spiritual. You anchored them in ways they never admitted. You covered them in ways they never thanked you for. You lifted them while they were trying to lower you. And now, without you, they feel what they once ignored: emptiness. They thought you were just another connection. But you were a divine interruption in their dysfunction. You were the flame that exposed their shadows. And instead of embracing transformation, they ran. They mocked. They disrespected. And now, even their reflection feels unfamiliar. That's what happens when you mishandle sacred things. You lose your identity, trying to build one on brokenness. They looked at you and saw too much. But what they really saw was a mirror, one that revealed who they weren't willing to become. You made them confront the truth. And not everyone is ready to heal. Not everyone is willing to grow. Some people would rather be admired for the mask than loved for their healing. And so they ran toward what felt comfortable, even if it cost them everything meaningful. They thought you were replaceable until they tried. Until they realized that peace doesn't come in pretty packaging, that presence doesn't come from attention, that love without truth is manipulation. They looked for your essence in others, only to find that your kind of light is rare. It cannot be copied, it cannot be mimicked, it cannot be stolen. You were the original, and they lost the blueprint. Now everywhere they go, your absence speaks. In the laughter that feels forced, in the conversations that lack depth, in the silence of nights where their pride has nothing left to comfort them. They scroll through lives pretending they're okay, but deep down they know. They let go of gold, chasing after glitter. They traded covenant for convenience. And the silence is starting to scream. You gave them something real. But real love comes with a cost: accountability. And accountability was too heavy for their pride to carry, so they blamed you, made you out to be the villain in a story where you were the only one who ever showed up with clean hands and a pure heart. But God saw it all. And now He's shifting things, not to punish, but to reveal. To reveal what happens when someone chooses ego over elevation. They lost peace because your peace came with you. They lost their glow because your presence was their source. You weren't just a person. You were a portal, a sacred doorway into something they were never meant to toy with. And now, that door is shut, sealed by grace. And they are left outside, not because you are cruel, but because you are called. And what's called doesn't stay where it's not respected. The lesson isn't yours to carry. The burden is no longer on your shoulders. You released them, you forgave them. And now heaven is handling the rest. The silence isn't emptiness, it's restoration. The solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. You're being set apart, not cast aside, hidden, not forgotten. Because before God brings you into the presence of people who recognize your worth, He removes you from places where you were never seen. And now everything is being flipped. The first shall be last. The rejected shall be crowned. The underestimated shall be elevated. And those who mocked your journey will watch your breakthrough, but they won't be a part of it. Not because you're bitter, but because elevation requires separation. And some people can't go where you're headed. Not because they're evil, but because they refuse to grow. And your next level is reserved for those who can carry it with honor. So rise without shame. Walk with quiet confidence. You don't need validation from the ones who tried to destroy what they didn't understand. You don't need closure from mouths that lied about you. You don't need acceptance from hearts that feared your authenticity. You are enough. You always were. And now the world is beginning to see what God always knew. Let them talk. Let them stare. Let them wonder how you're still glowing after all they did. Because your strength was never in their hands. It was forged in fire, cultivated in silence, protected by grace. And now you're becoming the person you were born to be. No longer begging to be seen, no longer shrinking to be accepted, no longer carrying the weight of those who chose confusion over clarity. You are rising, not out of revenge, but out of revelation. You are healing, not to prove a point, but to fulfill your purpose. You are growing, not to make them regret, but to make heaven proud. And those who once laughed at your pain will witness your joy. Those who once ignored your worth will see your crown. Those who once used your kindness will feel your absence, because favor speaks even in silence. And when God lifts you up, He does it in a way that no one can deny. So stand tall, chosen one. You are not just healing, you are being prepared. You are not just walking away, you are walking into destiny. You are not just another person they lost, you are the one they'll never forget. And that is the power of divine identity. Keep going, keep glowing, keep becoming. Heaven is watching, and your story has only just begun. There's something they'll never escape. No matter how far they run, no matter how loud they laugh, no matter how perfectly they pretend, it's your memory, not because of attachment, not because of obsession, but because God will never let them forget what they lost. You weren't just someone they dated. You weren't just a passing connection. You were divine alignment dressed in human form. And when they walked away, mocked, or mishandled you, they didn't just lose a person. They lost an encounter with the divine. You were a turning point in their life, a moment of grace, a window to transformation. And while they were playing games, heaven was watching. While they were entertaining distractions, you were offering restoration. And they took it for granted. But now that the silence has settled and the applause has faded, your name rises in their spirit like a whisper they can't shut off. They try to replace your energy, but it doesn't match. They try to drown the memory, but it keeps resurfacing. They try to pretend they've moved on, but something inside them aches when they see someone with your glow. It's not just nostalgia. It's a spiritual reminder. You were the blessing they asked for, and the test they failed. God has a way of placing reminders in the paths of those who mishandled His chosen, not as punishment, but as reflection. Because some lessons can't be taught through words, they must be felt in silence. And your absence? It's the sermon that keeps preaching. It's the mirror they can't look away from, because when someone loses what heaven assigned, every counterfeit that follows feels hollow. They'll scroll through their phone at 2 a.m. and your name will rise like smoke from a fire they thought was out. They'll sit in rooms full of people but feel an emptiness no one can fill, not because you were perfect, but because you were real. And real love, real loyalty, real presence doesn't evaporate when you exit. It lingers in the spirit. It echoes in the soul. Chosen one, don't let that ache confuse you. Don't let their silence make you question your value. You weren't just missed, you were marked. And those who touch what's sacred without reverence often walk away with hands that can't hold anything else. Not because they're cursed, but because they never honored what was holy. You were the answered prayer they treated like a backup plan. You were the sanctuary they mistook for scenery. And now that peace is gone, now that wisdom is gone, now that your presence is no longer there to shield, to pour, to uplift, they are face to face with who they truly are without you. And it's haunting, not because you left them with hate, but because you walked away with grace. Grace they didn't recognize until it was too late. You carried something they couldn't see, a light that made their path easier, a spirit that brought clarity to their confusion, a frequency that lifted them without even trying, but they confused comfort with control. And when God finally gave them the space they demanded, they realized peace doesn't live in pride. It lives in alignment. Now their spirit is unsettled, not because you cursed them, but because you blessed them. And blessings don't leave quietly. They leave imprints, they leave footprints in the heart. You were the gift and they mishandled it, but heaven saw it. And heaven responded, not with wrath, but with removal. You didn't just walk away, you were reassigned. And when heaven shifts your assignment, it's always for your protection. Now they walk with a weight they don't understand, a shadow of what could have been. And while they smile for the world, they can't fake what's missing in their soul. That's what happens when someone loses a miracle they thought would stay forever. They asked for peace. They asked for purpose. They asked for love. God sent you, and they weren't ready. So now they sit in a room full of options and still feel alone, because none of it feels like you. Chosen one, what you carried wasn't common. It was sacred. And sacred things aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be experienced. You gave them that experience, a glimpse into what it feels like to be held by someone chosen, to be seen by someone sent, to be loved by someone who doesn't just look at you, but into you. And now that memory lingers, not to torment, but to teach. Because sometimes God has to allow someone to feel the absence of a blessing before they can understand its worth. And in your absence, they're learning. Not through sermons, not through songs, but through the echo of your silence. But hear this, you were never the lesson. You were the gift. You were the light. You were the miracle. They turned you into the lesson by not recognizing the value of the blessing. And that's not your burden to carry. Your role was obedience. You showed up, you poured, you tried, you forgave, you prayed, and that's all heaven needed to elevate you. You passed your test. But theirs is just beginning. And now you rise, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Not out of revenge, but out of revelation. Because you finally understand you were never the problem. You were the prophecy. This isn't your season to chase what's lost. It's your season to embrace what's coming. The right ones will recognize what others ran from. The right ones will cherish what others discarded. The right ones will water what others left to dry. Because what you carry is not for everyone. It's for the ones sent by heaven to walk with you, not take from you. And for you, chosen one, this is not the end. This is the divine unfolding. Everything that was stolen will be restored. Every tear you cried in silence will return as joy in public. Every time you chose peace over pettiness, growth over gossip, love over revenge, heaven took note. And the reward is coming, not just for what you survived, but for how you survived, with grace, with faith, with silence when you could have shouted. So rise. Rise like the phoenix from the ashes. Rise with the quiet strength of someone who knows who they are. Rise with the confidence of someone who's been through fire and came out gold. Rise with the anointing of someone who was never meant to fit in because they were born to stand out. Your glow is not arrogance, it's evidence. Your peace is not indifference, it's power. Your silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. You are walking proof that God protects His own, even when the world doesn't understand the assignment. So don't look back. Don't wonder what they're thinking. Don't entertain what God already erased. You are not returning to what broke. You are stepping into what builds you. You are not looking for closure. You've become it. You are not hoping they realize what they lost. You are realizing what you gained. And that gain is priceless. The gain is peace that doesn't ask for permission. The gain is identity that doesn't need validation. The gain is purpose that no one can steal. The gain is clarity that reveals what's truly meant for you. Because when you're chosen, you don't chase, you align, you don't beg, you attract. You don't shrink, you shine, so shine, chosen one. Shine without apology, shine without explanation. Shine knowing that the same God who hid you is now revealing you, not to the ones who discarded you, but to the ones who can honor you, to the ones who see your soul, not just your skin, to the ones who don't fear your fire, but fan it. Because your fire was never meant to be dimmed, it was meant to be seen. You are not just recovering, you are being restored. You are not just surviving, you are being repositioned. And what's coming next? It won't require you to explain your worth. It will reflect it naturally. It won't need your resume. Your spirit will speak. It won't test your value. It will match it. Because God doesn't take from you without the intention to replace with better. He doesn't allow a door to close unless a divine one is opening. He doesn't break your heart unless He's about to bless your soul. And what's coming will make everything you lost feel like a seed compared to the harvest He's preparing. You're not waiting anymore. You're stepping in. You're not healing in silence. You're rising in power. You're not wondering why they didn't see your worth. You're walking with those who do. The silence wasn't empty. It was sacred. The detour wasn't denial. It was direction. The ending wasn't rejection. It was redirection into destiny. You've always been the miracle, and now you finally know it. You weren't the mistake. You were the miracle. You were the breakthrough wrapped in flesh. The answered prayer they didn't recognize because it didn't come in the package they expected. You came in truth, in love, in depth, and they were used to shallow. They were addicted to the surface, to illusions, to temporary highs that never last. So when the real thing showed up, they panicked. They pushed you away, not because you were too much, but because you were everything they weren't ready to receive. You were the gift, not just a gift that brought joy, but one that came to awaken, to disrupt patterns, to break generational cycles. And that kind of gift, it demands growth, it demands awareness, it demands honesty, but not everyone is willing to face themselves. So they ran, they blamed you, they made you question your light, they made you feel like being too kind, too loving, too open was a flaw, but that was never your weakness. It was your divine signature. You gave them healing, and they called it control. You gave them truth, and they called it too intense. You gave them love, and they mistook it for weakness. But the truth is, they couldn't recognize royalty because they were still playing with plastic crowns. You walked in with sacred oil, and they treated you like water, not knowing that every drop you poured into them was protected, powerful, and precious. They didn't see it. But the divine did. The world told you to be softer, quieter, easier to swallow. But your soul was born to speak truth even when it shakes the room. Your presence isn't passive, it's prophetic. Your spirit doesn't conform. It commands alignment. That's why you were misunderstood. That's why they projected their fears onto you, because your authenticity exposed their performance. Your calm revealed their chaos. Your clarity made their confusion louder. But that was never your burden to carry. You were sent to be the shift, not the show, not the spectacle, but the shift. The one who walks in and changes everything without having to raise your voice. The one who shows love and power can live in the same body. The one who carries grace and fire at the same time. You don't have to dim to be digestible. You don't have to shrink to make others feel tall. Your light was never meant to fit into broken rooms. It was meant to illuminate the path out of them. Now you know, you were never too much. You were just too real for people still playing pretend. You were too awake for people who made comfort their home. And that's why they'll never forget you. Not because of the good times, but because you represented everything they could have been, if only they were willing to rise. You were the root, not just the fruit. You carried depth, not just decoration. You showed them what growth looked like, but they chose convenience. You opened your heart, and they guarded theirs. But still you gave. You loved without games. You held space without judgment. You offered loyalty when it wasn't returned. That's not weakness. That's spiritual royalty. And when it all fell apart, you didn't fall apart with it. You bent, yes, you wept, you questioned, you doubted, but you didn't break. Because steel forged in fire always remembers its shape. Your spirit was never at risk. It was being refined, shaped, strengthened, not for them, but for what's coming, for what God has prepared, for the territory you're about to step into. And what's ahead is so sacred, so aligned, so tailored for you, that the pain you endured will start to make sense. You'll see why the heartbreak had to happen, why the rejection was protection, why the door had to close, Because what's next won't require you to beg for attention. You won't have to convince anyone of your worth. You won't have to water yourself down just to be tolerated. You will be celebrated, not for what you give, but for who you are. Your past doesn't disqualify you. Your pain doesn't discredit you. Your detours don't delay your destiny. They develop it. Every tear was watering the roots of something greater. Every lonely night was building strength. Every season of silence was preparing your voice to echo with purpose. You are not the same person who cried in confusion. You are not the same soul who begged to be seen. You have evolved, quietly, powerfully, divinely. You walk differently now, not with arrogance, but with awareness. You no longer seek what doesn't serve you. You no longer chase what runs from you. You no longer tolerate energy that drains you. You are not afraid to be alone, because solitude became your sanctuary. That's where you met your truth. That's where you heard your call. That's where you remembered who you are. You are a walking revelation, not because of what you've been through, but because of what you've overcome. You've been in rooms that tried to suffocate you, relationships that tried to silence you, environments that tried to control you, and yet here you are, still standing, still glowing, still believing. That is not coincidence. That is calling. You are called to break patterns that have survived. For generations, you are called to speak what others are afraid to say. You are called to love deeper than betrayal, to rise higher than rejection, to carry peace even when the world is in chaos. That's not easy, that's not popular, but that's divine. And now, it's your time. Your time to step boldly into what's been prepared for you. Your time to stop apologizing for your light. Your time to stop waiting for permission. Your time to walk in the fullness of your anointing. Because what's coming is not just a reward, it's a recognition of everything you've carried in silence. A recognition of everything you gave without being seen. A recognition of the heart you protected, the prayers you whispered, the mountains you climbed with no one cheering. Heaven was watching. Heaven has always been watching. And now the divine is opening doors no man can shut, aligning connections no one can break, restoring what you thought was lost, not as a favor, but as fulfillment. Because you didn't just survive, you remained faithful, and that faith, that's what's unlocking this next season. So don't look back with regret. Don't replay what could have been. Don't question if you were ever enough. You were more than enough. You were the answer to a need they didn't even understand. But your role in that chapter is finished, not because you failed, but because you fulfilled it. And now you move forward, not to prove them wrong, but to live in what's rightfully yours. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your unfolding, the unveiling of what you were born for. You don't need to force it. Just align, just breathe, just trust, because what is yours is already magnetized to your spirit. The blessings know your name. The breakthrough has your signature. The favor is coded in your DNA. So rise, chosen one. Rise with grace. Rise with clarity. Rise with joy that doesn't need a reason. Rise with faith that doesn't fear the unknown. Rise knowing that you are not behind. You are right on time. You are not forgotten. You are being revealed. You are not waiting. You are walking into prophecy. You are not the mistake. You are the miracle. You are not the rejected. You are the redeemed. You are not the forgotten. You are the one He's been preparing all along. So go ahead and shine. The world is finally ready for your light. You didn't come this far to break. You didn't walk through fire just to be ashes. You didn't cry in silence, fight battles no one saw, and carry weight that would have crushed lesser souls, only to end up questioning your worth. Chosen one, you were born for more. More than survival, more than silence, more than sacrifice without reward. You were born to rise, to lead, to shift atmospheres just by being who you are. You don't have to fit the mold. You are the mold breaker. You were never meant to blend in, to walk quietly among the crowd, to play small just to keep others comfortable. That discomfort people feel around your truth, your light, your power. That's conviction. That's transformation trying to find a way through their resistance. And you are the vessel that carries it. You are the one chosen to bear the weight of glory, the one marked for something the world cannot always explain, but will one day have no choice but to acknowledge. You were called when no one was watching. You were chosen in the stillness, in the nights when you felt invisible, in the seasons where no one clapped for you, in the moments when everything in you wanted to quit. But something higher whispered, "Not yet." That whisper was purpose. That whisper was destiny. That whisper was a signal from heaven that your time hadn't passed. It was simply being prepared. Preparation doesn't always look like promotion. Sometimes it looks like isolation, like tears, like closed doors, like being misunderstood. But don't you dare mistake the silence for abandonment. It was heaven's shield, a sacred cocoon, a place where your wings were being formed in darkness. So, when you finally emerged, no storm could collapse your flight. You've been walking through a divine metamorphosis. Every loss, every betrayal, every unanswered prayer wasn't rejection. It was realignment. You were never being buried, you were being planted. And planted things don't panic when it's dark. They know that roots grow deep before branches reach wide. They know that strength starts in the soil, not the spotlight. You've been underestimated, overlooked, mishandled, but those were all ingredients in the making of your strength. The kind of strength that doesn't boast, but becomes. The kind of strength that doesn't need applause to be powerful, because true power doesn't beg to be seen. It moves in silence until the world has no choice but to take notice. And that's where you are now, standing on the edge of revelation, on the threshold of a season where everything starts to make sense. The delays, the detours, the people who walked away, the doors that slammed shut in your face. It all begins to align, and you'll realize it wasn't happening to you. It was happening for you. For your elevation, for your refinement, for your revelation of self. You are not broken, you are blooming, you are not empty, you are expanding, you are not forgotten, you are favored. You were never waiting for permission. You were waiting for divine positioning, and now that moment has arrived. The moment where you stop questioning and start trusting. The moment where you stop replaying what was and start preparing for what is. The moment where you stop chasing and start attracting. Because what is for you is already making its way to you, drawn not by desperation, but by your frequency, your authenticity, your obedience. You don't need to chase people, prove your worth, or explain your calling. You are not on this earth to convince. You are here to embody. You are here to become, to awaken the sleeping, to heal the broken, to disrupt systems built on fear. You are the living proof that love still wins, that light still breaks through, that those who walk with God may bend, but they will never be broken. There is a fire inside you that the world didn't give, and the world can't extinguish. A fire that will outlast opinions, outlive betrayals, and override any lies spoken about you. That fire was lit by divine breath. That fire is your why, your weapon, your witness. And that fire, it's only getting stronger. You are the one who turns pain into power, the one who turns silence into strategy, the one who turns rejection into redirection. You are not who they said you were. You are who God called you to be. And every lie spoken against your name is falling away like dust, because the truth is rising. This is your season to be unapologetically aligned with your spirit, aligned with your mission, aligned with your Creator. This is your season to rise with no fear of falling, because you've already fallen and still got back up. And now, Falling is no longer your fear. Staying small is. You didn't go through all that darkness just to be dim. You didn't endure all that heartbreak just to harden. You didn't lose people you thought you'd never live without just to question your worth. You were reborn in those losses, recalibrated, in that pain, refined in that fire. And what came out of it wasn't weaker, it was wiser, it was wilder, it was warrior-made. You are not what you went through, you are what you grew through. So walk tall, chosen one, with your head high and your spirit grounded. Walk like you belong in every room God opens for you. Walk like your footsteps are prayers, like your breath is sacred, like your presence is prophecy, because it is. You are not here by accident. You are here on assignment, and the same God who called you is the same God who is backing you, even if you feel unqualified, even if your past haunts you, even if your heart still trembles. You are still chosen, still anointed, still appointed for this very hour. Heaven didn't invest this much in you for nothing. So now, as the noise fades and the winds shift, choose to believe. Choose to remember who you are, whose you are, what you carry, and where you're going. Because this next season, it's not about striving, it's about stepping into rooms where you don't shrink, into relationships where you don't settle, into spaces that honor your light instead of dimming it. You are the answer someone is praying for, the calm in someone's chaos, the wisdom in someone's confusion, the confirmation in someone's doubt. And your life is the sermon they'll never forget. So speak with conviction, move with purpose, love without fear, and live like heaven is watching, because it is. Every time you choose peace over pettiness, every time you love when it's easier to walk away, every time you heal instead of harm, the divine sees it, and you are rewarded, not just with things, but with power, the kind of power that can't be taken, only given, only cultivated, only carried by those who have been through something. That's you. You're not just chosen, you are trusted. So breathe deep. The past is over. The fear has no voice. The pain has served its purpose. And now you rise into joy that doesn't waver, into peace that surpasses understanding, into purpose that fuels your every step. This is your unveiling. This is your alignment. This is your moment, and you're ready, more ready than you've ever been. Welcome, chosen one. The world is finally catching up to who you've always been. Now go, shine like you were never meant to be hidden. Because you weren't. You were meant to be revealed.